Good morning, church. It is good to be with you here today. Happy Friday. It always seems to come around again. And this Friday we are looking at Deuteronomy chapter 28 and 29 and Galatians chapter 6. Deuteronomy 28, I think, is one of the hardest books in the Pentateuch, as we get listed out the blessings and the curses. I think it's interesting to note that the curses are about 2/3 longer than the blessings. And, you read through the list and you go, well, this seems like a pretty obvious choice, to always have success. My battles will always be won. My food baskets will always be full. The women of our land will always have healthy babies, and our children and our old, we will always be healthy and just as a community safe. Doesn't that just sound this the nearest that you could get to paradise on this earth? And that was God's offer to his people. If you just listen to me, do what I say, I will take care of you, and everything will be good for you. Always the head and never the tail. Now, I just want to pause briefly and discuss that phrase, because I've heard preachers use that promise that God gives, and that's read it in the scripture. It's there for Israel. Always the head and never the tail. Couple things we remember about that particular promise. Number one, it was given to Israel specifically in response to them keeping the covenant law that God gave, and it was for the land of Israel. Sorry if you hear squeaking in the background. My dog found a little toy. And it is not the new covenant promise in the sense of promised fiscal prosperity, in the sense of safety from trials, and always being the victor in a military or in a battle sense. But rather, Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble. When you're persecuted, move from place to place. And that people will hate you because of our faith. So, we can't take that promise to mean that we are promised any kind of fiscal or monetary prosperity or even favor with the people around us. It's not going to be like that. But what it is like, and the way that it's true, because remember our fun word we've been learning, principalism. What's the principle here is that ultimately our God, who is the God of all things, the creator of all things, will cause us to ultimately be victorious over all things, and we will indeed rule and reign alongside of him, truly the head and never the tail in an eternal sense. But we cannot grasp that promise for the right here and the right now. As we've talked about before, what we can grasp is the promise that God gives for joy, peace, patience. I mean, we just read the list yesterday that God says we can be free from anxiety, we can be free from worry, we can trust him that he will lead and he will guide us in this life. And so those are good promises that we can hold on to. The other verse that I want to look at here today briefly is in Galatians chapter 6. Because there's a kind of a twist in the phrasing here, and I think it's worth examining. It says, brothers and sisters, if someone is overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore such a person with a gentle spirit, watching out for yourselves, so that you also won't be tempted. Carry one another's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone considers himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Let each person examine his own work, and then he can take pride in himself alone and not compare himself with someone else, for each person will have to carry his own load. So it's interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, but carry each other's burdens, but you also have to carry your own load. What gives in the distinction there? Well, that word load can translate to something like knapsack. It's your daily burdens, your responsibilities. You are responsible for taking care of yourself on a day-to-day basis, making sure that if you're able, that you have food to eat, that you have shelter, and that you have even earned enough extra to supply needs of others. That's one of our Christian obligations. If you're an able-bodied person, you are obligated to take care of your family's needs. And later on, Paul writes about those of us who maybe have a widowed mother or mother-in-law or family, or to take care of our families too. They're part of our load. But carry each other's burdens. A burden is something that has come upon us that is above and beyond the daily bear. We've had friends that have had house fires and lost everything. In that case, they can't carry that burden by themselves. They need help from a church community, significant illness that comes on. We can imagine the things that come upon us where we just need other people to come and help us lift up our hands so that we can continue to walk. And he says, so then we will reap what we sow in verse 6. If we fulfill this advice that we've just been given by Paul, what we will reap is a strong and a compelling community that we will live out together as God has commanded us. And so let us not get in the habit of being a burden. Let us pick up our load. Jesus says that we should pick up our cross, follow him, and do what he tells us to do so that we can experience the blessings that he has for us. And then when we see others in need, we remember our reading yesterday. If you see your brother's ox and it's fallen, help him get it up. We need to help each other when a burden comes upon us that's too heavy. Well, I sure love you, church. I'm praying for you again today. Let me know what you think. Feel free to share your own thoughts or devotion out of our reading today in the comments.